What's up guys, David here. I got an interesting question about Aliasing and I thought the answer would make a good video, so this is what we're doing today. Before we start, as usual, check the info box down below for free plugins, special discounts, offers, and go to the website mixplustv.com to book mix and mastering with me, private lessons, mix consultations, and all the other services. In there you will also find all the mix and mastering courses. And if you want to access the exclusive videos here on YouTube, click the join button, become a MixPlusTV member, get all the perks. And if the videos are helping you, please consider using the super thanks or grab some merch. Here's the question from Warp Academy. Hey David, great video, glad to see you going deeper into this topic. What I always try to access is the aliasing audible, and does it sound like something that needs to be addressed? I know in some other videos you've discussed how clipping extremely short audio events like kick and snare transient will create distortion, but that distortion can be masked by the transient and also increase the perceived loudness of the drum. I'd love to hear your perspective on the audibility of aliasing in various scenarios and how masking plays into it. Love your videos, thanks for the contribution to the community. Thank you for the question. All right, I feel I need to make a distinction between what we commonly refer as a distortion or saturation and aliasing. And the main distinction for me is distortion and saturation can be a positive. Aliasing is never a positive. For me, that is always a negative. And you gave the example that I gave, clipping kick and snare or using saturation on kick and snare or short audio events to both contain the dynamics and at the same time enhancing the perceived loudness or the snap or the crack. That is an example on how to use distortion and saturation, which can be a negative if it's too much, to our advantage. For two reasons. One, because if used tastefully, distortion can be pleasant. We have tons of saturators, right? Both in the analog world and in the digital world, because it adds harmonics, it adds density, it can help with intelligibility for a bass, for a vocal. But of course, if it's too much, you overcook with saturation and distortion, that can be a negative. Aliasing can never be a positive for me. And I'm not gonna sit here explaining what aliasing is. There's plenty of videos and plenty of good literature explaining what aliasing is, and I can probably link a couple down below. But aliasing is a byproduct of the digital world, specifically using anything that introduces distortion, which is not just saturation, but compression can add distortion, limiting can add distortion, and all these processes can add aliasing. And aliasing is something that if we can, we will always want to avoid. So that's the main distinction and difference between saturation, distortion, and aliasing. Now, the other good part of the question is it audible and can we hear it? And that's the tricky part. First of all, I feel aliasing was a much bigger problem years ago when the concept and the science wasn't that widely spread, and even some developers weren't aware of it. One of the reasons because digital got better over the years is because we realized we had that problem and has been taken care. How it has been taken care? With plugins that have internal oversample, we understood that working a higher sample rate will also partially take care of that and limit the problem or get rid of it altogether. I feel like aliasing and the concept of aliasing or the extent of how damaging that is has been overblown a little bit, especially in the YouTube community, especially in the forum corridors. And now there's people out there that think that any amount of aliasing is gonna completely destroy your mix, or a plugin that shows a little bit of aliasing, it's to be completely dismissed. When the reality is, first of all, there have been plenty of great sounding records, even in the aliasing years, right? So it is a problem. Don't take me wrong. And like I said, in my opinion, is always a negative. But the reality is there are probably hundreds of great sounding records out there that have, to some extent, aliasing baked in as a byproduct of certain processing. Now, the tricky part is, can we hear it? Yes and no, meaning let's say you have a saturator that doesn't have oversample and it causes a little bit of aliasing in your lead vocal, right? If you go and solo that vocal, I want to say 9 people out of 10, if not all 10, will not be able to tell if that track has aliasing or not, unless you have an A/B with and without. And even at that point, I would be hard-pressed to say whether or not people can tell. The problem with aliasing is cumulative. So let's say you have a 60 tracks mix and 40 tracks, 40 out of 60, have aliasing. Now that is gonna be audible. In what way? Because again, if we solo those 40 tracks, we don't have an A-B with and without aliasing, right? So what we hear is the end result, and the end result is gonna be that feeling, right? That so often we talk about on YouTube or in the engineering community. It sounds harsh, it sounds unpleasant, it sounds cold, it sounds hard. All these terms are a way for us to describe something that our brain doesn't process as pleasant. And whether people don't have the technical vocabulary or they don't have the technical knowledge to understand that that's what it is, the result is the same. We do this, like, no, it's not, that's something off, right? And that's not only aliasing, right? Because there's many things in the digital world that can cause that. And I don't want to go into the debate, analog versus digital, but it's a fact. First of all, aliasing doesn't happen in the analog world. And second, analog, it's just more forgiving. That's a fact. Now, whether or not people think that analog sounds better, sounds more euphonic, it's faster, it's whatever it is or not, that's personal preference at this point. I made many videos on the differences between analog and digital. Everybody is entitled to have their opinion. But in the subject of aliasing, that is a digital problem, right? So you won't be able to isolate and hear aliasing. What you hear is the result of a cumulative effect of a problem that repeats many times, enough times in a mix, that it gives you that final feeling of uneasiness. Let's put it this way. There's something is off, or something could be better. A fog or a veil, not enough clarity, or too harsh of a top end. Whatever you want to describe it, everybody describe it in a different way, but at the end of the day, we are all feeling the same thing. And so I think because of this, yes, on one hand, it's been overblown a little bit, but on the other hand, it is an actual problem. And it can still present itself, even though today we have many plugins with oversampling. We hopefully all work at higher sample rates because computers are more powerful, so it's not as common as it was before. We need to work and operate knowing that could be a problem, being aware of what sample rate we are working, being aware of whether or not our plugin have internal oversampling, being aware of what kind of processors can cause aliasing and whatnot, and simply playing it safe. And again, not overthinking it. And want to stress this again, if we have two plugins in a mix that for some reason they are causing aliasing, I promise everybody that it won't break or make your mix. Is it better if we take action to avoid that? Yeah, of course it is. But yeah, that's my thought on the subject. I hope this answered the question. I hope the video is going to be useful for other people. If you have more questions, leave them in the comment down below. If you like the video, please don't forget to leave a like. Go to the website mixbustv.com for all the services, mixing and mastering with me, and all the other services and mix and mastering courses. Join the channel, become a member to access all the exclusive videos. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay safe. See you next time.
Hands on my neck, hands grip my throat. Lift me up, man, take control.